There is a very old saying that almost everyone has heard at some point in their life: you reap what you sow. And honestly, as life goes on, the more people realize that this isn't just a pretty saying. This is practically an invisible law operating around us all the time. Today I want to talk about the 12 laws of karma. And before anyone thinks of something too religious or mystical, hold on, because a lot of people interpret karma the wrong way. Karma is not simply punishment. It's not an old man sitting in the sky punishing people. It's not magical energy. Karma works much more like consequence, cause and effect, action and return. The way you think, act, speak, and treat others. And that's also where inevitably you start building the kind of life you'll have in the future, and this shows up all the time. There are people who go around spreading disrespect, arrogance, manipulation, dishonesty, and aggressiveness, and then they don't understand why they're surrounded by chaos. In the same way, there are people who help, build, respect, work honestly, maintain emotional balance, and slowly start to reap stability, trust, and growth. The first law of karma is exactly this, the great law. What you plant comes back to you. It may take time, sometimes it takes years, because life doesn't work at the speed of human anxiety, but everything comes back. Words come back, actions come back, choices come back, even thoughts end up shaping a person's emotional reality. And this is very important today because there is an entire generation living as if consequences don't exist. People do anything. They humiliate, betray, use, manipulate, lie, and believe they'll never face any consequences, but they do. Life gives it back to you, maybe not exactly the way a person imagines, but it does. Another extremely important law is the law of responsibility. And honestly, this might be one of the hardest ones in modern life, because nowadays almost no one wants to take responsibility for anything. People want results without accepting consequences. They want growth without discipline. They want peace, but they fuel emotional conflict every day. The text says something very powerful. The reality around us is a continuous reflection of a person's internal state. And that doesn't mean absolute blame for everything. There are real injustices in life, there is real pain, but even in the face of them, you are still responsible for how you react. Another very strong law is the law of connection. Everything is connected. The past has an influence. The present shapes the future, and every little choice matters. That destroys that modern immediate results mindset, where people believe that a single grand decision will change their whole life. It doesn't. Life is built on repeated details, on habits, on small actions, on the quiet behaviors of everyday life. Your future doesn't come out of nowhere. It is slowly built by the decisions you make now. Another very powerful thing, the text really emphasizes the importance of consistency. In other words, you need to act in a way that aligns with what you want to build. Because a lot of people dream big, but live completely disconnected from their own goals. The law of focus is another extremely powerful thing today. Because we live in a time where everyone is mentally fragmented. People wake up and immediately dive into cell phone, news, gossip, comparison, anxiety, social media, information overload. And then they don't understand why they can't evolve. The text says something very true. You can't focus on two things at the same time. So, if your mind is completely occupied by fear, anger, envy, comparison, negativity, there's no room left for real growth. Another extremely powerful law is the law of generosity. Because true maturity is shown in the ability to help others without being driven solely by your own ego. And that's rare nowadays. We live in an extremely indifferent culture, individualistic. Everyone wants to receive, to be seen, to win, to grow, but very few people want to contribute. Very few people want to serve. Very few people want to build something that benefits other people as well. The text says something very important. Actions reveal true intentions. And that's real. Nice words are useless if your behavior contradicts everything. Another extremely powerful law is the law of presence. And honestly, this is one of the greatest emotional challenges of humanity today. Because people live trapped in the past, anxious about the future, disconnected from the present. There are people who have never emotionally moved on from an old betrayal, an old failure, an old loss, an old humiliation, while others live only dreaming of a perfect future without taking action today. But the text makes something very clear. The present is still the most important part of life because it's now that decisions happen, it's now that change happens. Another very powerful law, the law of change. Nothing changes until you really change. And this completely destroys the fantasy of passive transformation. A lot of people make promises, make resolutions, say all the right things, create plans, but don't act. And without action, there is no transformation. Karma responds to action, not empty intention. The last two laws may be the most profound, patience and meaning. The text states clearly that nothing valuable is built without patience. And that's very difficult in a generation used to instant rewards. People want quick success, quick money, quick healing, quick growth. But almost everything that's truly worthwhile takes time. True relationships take time. Emotional growth takes time. Building character takes time. And karma works largely through quiet consistency. Another very powerful point. The last law talks about collective contribution. In other words, your actions don't just impact you. They impact family, friends, society, and the surrounding environment. Everything you do has a collective effect. Honestly, this is something the world has completely forgotten. People live as if their choices are isolated, but they're not. Every behavior spreads consequences. Every action influences the environment. Every word creates an impact. Deep down, the 12 laws of karma are about human responsibility, about awareness, about understanding that life isn't random all the time, that choices have weight, that behavior brings consequences, and that no one can escape forever from the consequences of their own way of living. If you want me to bring more content about spiritual laws, consciousness, human energy, and inner development, comment below. The law of focus is another extremely powerful principle today. Because we live in a time where everyone is mentally fragmented, people wake up and immediately dive into cell phone, news, gossip, comparison, anxiety, social media, information overload, and then they don't understand why they can't evolve. The text says something very true. You can't focus on two things at the same time. So if your mind is completely occupied by fear, anger, envy, comparison, negativity, there's no room left for real growth. Another extremely powerful law is the law of generosity. Because true maturity is clearly seen in the ability to help others without living only for your own ego. And that's rare nowadays. We live in an extremely individualistic culture. Everyone wants to receive, to be noticed, to win, to grow. But very few people want to contribute. Very few people want to serve. Very few people want to build something that benefits other people as well. The text says something very important. Actions reveal true intentions. And that's real. Fine words are useless if your behavior contradicts everything. The second law of karma might be one of the most important in your whole life. You attract what you are, not what you say you want. And that's heavy because a lot of people keep repeating, I want peace, I want prosperity, I want love, I want stability. But they live immersed in chaos, negativity, envy, disorganization, emotional destruction. She wants to gain something she hasn't built within herself. And then a big trap emerges, blaming others for everything. Nowadays, it's become trendy to blame outside factors for every difficulty. It's always the government, the family, the partner, the friends, society, the universe. But karma has a lot to do with personal responsibility. The way you live internally slowly starts to shape everything around you. Another powerful factor is your environment. The text says exactly that. You end up becoming similar to what you constantly observe. And that's real. If someone is constantly surrounded by negativity, witnessing destruction, immersed in gossip, feeding hatred, living in constant conflict, that starts to shape their mind. And then she starts to carry exactly that, exactly the energy she complains about receiving. That's why so many people stay stuck in the same cycles, the same bad relationships, the same emotional problems, the same destructive outcomes. Because the setting changes, but you remain the same person on the inside. And until a person changes on the inside, their world keeps repeating the same patterns. The third law of karma is extremely uncomfortable. What you resist continues to exist. And that explains why so many people keep running away from their own problems without being able to solve any of them. Because admitting weakness hurts. Admitting mistakes hurts. Admitting that something is broken inside us hurts. So many people prefer to pretend that everything is fine. But pretending doesn't solve anything. The text says something very powerful. You can't change a situation without first accepting that it exists. And that applies to everything. Addictions, relationships, money, emotional health, self-destructive behavior. Some people spend years saying, I don't have a problem, while her whole life falls apart around her. Another very powerful point. The more she learns, the more she struggles emotionally against certain truths. She creates more negative energy inside herself. And that happens a lot nowadays. People run away from silence, from self-reflection, from responsibility, from their own conscience, because looking inside is scary. But as long as you don't face your own flaws, nothing changes. The fourth law is also intense. Wherever you go, you are still yourself. And that completely destroys that fantasy of, my life will magically change when I move to a new city, start a new relationship, or change jobs. It won't. Because the problem often remains within the person themselves. You change your environment, but you take your thoughts, your fears, your patterns, your traumas, your choices with you. That's right, Mela.